Horrible histories. Measly Middle Ages. Let's look at the chapter called Dreadful Disease. In 1937, Death strolled through Europe with his scythe, mowing down and missing others. Swish, swish. In 1349, he, Death, sailed across the Channel, La Manche, to the British Isles. The terrified people never knew who was going to be next, as an Italian diary recorded. There appeared certain swellings in the groin and under the armpit. The victims spat blood, and in 3 days they were dead. These swellings, like a spot, like that is gonflé, a swelling, began to ooze with blood and pus. Purple-black blotches appeared on the skin, and you smelt absolutely revolting. Swell, spit, smell, swish, you were gone. Death's scythe was the bubonic plague, and the piles of bodies grew like chopped straw into a haystack. They were loaded onto carts, dropped into pits, or in Avignon in France, thrown in the river. Oh, hello dear, catch anything?
Just a dead body.
Children were Death's particular favourites when it came to the swish. Of course, preachers, religious people, said the children probably got what they deserved. One explained. It may be that children suffer heaven's revenge because they miss going to church, or because they despise their fathers and mothers. God killed children with the plague, as you can see every day, because, according to the old law, children who are rebels or disobedient to their parents are punished by death. Do what I say or die. You can see that not much has changed. Crazy cures. The trouble was that doctors didn't know what caused the plague, and they didn't know how to cure it. People mistakenly believed you could catch it by looking at a victim, breathing bad air, drinking from poisoned wells. In France, they said the English did the poisoning. In Spain, they blamed the Arabs. In Germany, suspected poisoners were nailed into barrels and thrown into the river, and everyone blamed lepers. Do you remember what lepers are? Talk about people in the Robin Hood book. Lepers were people who had a disease which meant that they lost their fingers or their arms, and they were often outcasts of society. And the cures were almost as dreadful as the disease. Doctors already had some wacky cures for illnesses. They said, wear a magpie's beak around the neck to cure toothache. Cut a hole in the skull to let out the devil and cure madness. Here is a picture of a poor man who's had a hole in his skull cut. I don't think he's alive anymore, but, well, at least he isn't mad anymore. With something as deadly as the bubonic plague, they had no chance. They suggested, throw sweet-smelling herbs on a fire to clean the air. Sit in a sewer so the bad air of the plague is driven off by the worse air of the drains. Drink a medicine of 10-year-old treacle. Swallow powders of crushed emeralds. Just for the rich, I think, that cure. Eat arsenic powder. highly poisonous. Try letting blood out of the patient, but only when the patient's horoscope was right. Kill all the cats and dogs in the town. Here's a good one. Shave a live chicken's bottom and strap it to the plague sore. Shave is the verb raser. So shave a live chicken's bottom and then strap it to the sore. It's bad enough that I'm dying without looking stupid too. Here's another one. March from town to town, flogging yourself with a whip. I don't know about curing the plague, but it's great exercise. The doctors checked the urine of their patients. If there was blood in it, there was no hope. A few people who caught the plague recovered. Others took the only cure that worked, run away from the plague-infested towns into the countryside. The rich people with country houses could do this. The poor stayed at home and died. The real cause of the plague wasn't discovered till just 100 years ago. Fleas carried the plague germs. Fleas are like les poux in French. And the fleas lived on rats, and their germs killed the rats. A dead rat is not very tasty, as children who say stay to school dinners will tell you. So the fleas looked for a new home. If there were no rats about, then the fleas would hop on to a human and spread the germs to that human. When their new human friend died, they'd hop on to another human, maybe the person who'd nursed the first victim, and so it went on. I think I've got fleas, Dad. Scratch, scratch, scratch. All this plague around and you're worried about a few fleas. Huh. Little did they know that the fleas caused the plague. The plague had its funny side, if you have that sort of sick sense of humour. The Scots hated the English. That's the Scottish, the people from l'Écosse, hated the English and were delighted to see the plague destroying so many of their old enemy. They decided 1349 would be a good time to invade. The English would be too weak to defend themselves. When their forces invaded, the plague struck. Many Scots soldiers died. Many more ran home to their towns and villages, taking the plague with them. In the wars between England and Scotland, death didn't take sides. In Messina, on the Italian island of Sicily, people believe the plague death appeared as a large black dog. It carried a sword in its paws and smashed the ornaments and altars in their churches. Many swore they'd seen it. I always knew those dogs were up to no good. Meow. In Scandinavia, the people saw death as a pest maiden. She flew out the mouths of the dead and drifted along in the form of a flame to infect the next house. Never give the kiss of life to a plague victim or you'll get singed lips. Fire! In Lithuania, a similar maiden waved a red scarf through the window to let in death. A brave man saw the waving scarf and sliced off the maiden's hand. He died, but the village was saved. The scarf was kept in the local church for many years. Of course, it could have belonged to some armless girl, couldn't it? That's him! He did it! Some people believed the best way to get rid of your wickedness was to beat the devil out of you. In Europe, groups of 200 to 300 people called flagellants went around whipping themselves and each other for 33.3 days, the number of years Christ lived on earth. Don't know if you remember, but there was a picture. That's the picture of people, the flagellants. They're whipping each other to get rid of the plague. Apart from the steel-tipped whips they had to put up with, no shaving, no washing, no change of clothes, no comfortable bed, and no talking to women. At first, the flagellants blamed the priests for the evil of the plague, but the priests fought back with threats to ban the flagellants. So the measly flagellants from church decided to blame an easier target, the Jewish people in town. They rushed to the Jewish part of each town and murdered everyone they could find. In some places like Worms in Germany in 1349, the Jewish people cheated the flagellants of their sport. They set fire to themselves in their houses in a mass suicide. 6,000 died in Mainz that year, and not one of the 3,000 Jewish people in Erfurt survived. Measly Middle Ages.